So there's not going to be a regular video today. We're going to instead take a look at kind of where we've been so far, what we've covered so far, to make sure we're okay with everything. Okay. Turn off my air cleaner so maybe you can hear me better. So the last chapter, or the last section in chapter 5 on using functions with turtles, you can look over, but we're not going to do anything with it right now. We may come back later. Okay. So let's take a look at where we've been with our journey through Python. The first thing we had was just the idea of input and output, and actually variables may have came first, so I don't remember. So we'll go both ways. In fact, let's start with variables first. Okay. So variables in Python are not strongly typed. You can just say x is equal to 7. You can say x is equal to Bob, and that's perfectly okay. Okay. Variable names can be any letter, upper or lowercase. They can start with an underscore, but we don't normally do that because those are typically reserved, and they can include numbers in the name, but they can't start with a number. Okay. If you want to find out what kind of variable it is, there's a type command that if you take a type X that returns, in this case, it returned an str. Okay. You have to print it out to do something with it. Okay. As far as the output goes, you have the print statement, which can be either a string of some sort, in quotes. It could be a variable, comma, string. Okay. And remember, we also have the format function, which is going to take some string and then have some format string like that. Okay. So that's the basic idea behind the output that we have. Remember also with the output, there are times when we're going to want to use the separator. By default, it's a space. So you can do a sep equals like comma if you wanted. You can make no separator if you wanted. Okay. There's also the end equals. Normally end is a new line character, which looks like that, but you can make it a tab if you want. You could make it 2 new line characters. So lots of options on that. Okay. As far as input goes, let me get that right away. The input function takes some string, prompt, enter something. Okay. By default, it returns a string. Okay. So if we say answer is equal to, it would take that as a string. But we can also put the whole thing we often do into an integer or a float or whatever else you want to do. Okay. That would turn answer into an integer. Okay. So that's how we usually use the input and output. Okay. So the next thing we have here, we have our selection statements. Okay. So we can say something like x is equal to int input, enter a number. Okay. They'll ask for the number. Then we can say if x is less than 0, we can print negative. Again, the spacing here is important. We can do an L if x is greater than 0. We can print a positive. And then finally our else, which takes no condition, is print 0. Okay, so we can certainly do that. And then that would just ask for a number when it finally runs. Enter a -3, it will say that it's negative. Okay. So that's what our if else looks like. If you have to have an if for anything, you don't have to have an elif. You can have multiple elifs if you want, and you don't have to have an else unless you want. Okay. The else is if there's nothing else that gets selected, go here. Okay. So with these if statements, only one path will ever be taken, even if more than one thing fits. It takes the first one that hits. Okay. That's what those look like. Okay. So now let's talk about repetition. So the repetition, first we have are the condition controlled loops. Okay, something like x is equal to 0 while x is less than 10. Print x x is equal to x plus 1. Okay. So that's just going to print 0 through 9. Okay. Because it says less than, not less than or equal to. So that's the basic function of how a while loops, and it's depending on the user. You'll often, we've seen this before with like have a choice is equal to, I don't know, 3, then we'll have it part of a menu, and then while choice is not equal to say 4 is the exit. And then inside of here, instead of an automatic increment, we'll just have a, you know, choice is equal to int input, enter your choice. Okay, so in this case, with the condition control loop, you have no idea how long it's going to run. Okay, so enter your choice. If I say 6, enters a 6. Enter your choice, you know, whatever, 7, fine. Enter a 4, now we're done. Okay, so that's a condition control loop. Okay, the other kind of control loop here is just going to be an iteration, or a, I forget what the other one's called. This is condition control loop. The other one's just a count. Oh, it's count control loop. That's it. Count control loop. That's with the 4. Okay, and this would be something like for C and range. Remember, range can have up to 3 attributes or parameters. So let's say we want to go from 10 to 100. So I have to go one past that in steps of 5. Okay. And then again, I have to indent that and print C. Okay, so let me get rid of this guy. Run this. Okay, and it's going to go starting with 10, goes up to, but not, it goes up to as long as it's less than 101. So it goes up to 100. Okay. Both the if statements and the loops can be nested. So you can have one inside the other. Okay. Which makes sense. Okay. Then the last thing that we've covered is going to be on functions. And the big thing here is that now all of our programs have this main function. Okay. Even if our program is just hello world, if I ask you to write a hello world program, it would have to look like this. Okay. And that is just the basis that we're using for all of our programs. But we can also have any function we want. Functions can take parameters and return parameters. So they don't have to. So if I have like a double int function that takes a number, okay, it's just going to return 2 times n. Okay. So I have to call this from someplace, usually the main, and I have to capture what it's going to return to me. Okay, so I can say x is equal to double it 5. Okay, and I'm going to bring it to x. Okay, when I do that, it should, well, that's something else. Oh, my main didn't have a colon. Run it again. So it now takes the 5, sends it to double it, returns the 10, sets x to 10, and then prints out x. Okay. So again, we can send parameters. It's the only way to get information into the function. Okay, and we can return things back through the return statement. Okay, so if I were to just say something like y is equal to 2 times n, and then up here, I'll double it, and then want to print y. Okay, not going to work. Okay, it's not going to have a value for y, because each variable that, so y is defined in double it has no function in main. Okay, so you have to kind of keep those straight. Okay. The other thing we talked about just today was the idea of random numbers. So with the random, and also the math library. So let's do both of those. So we can import a random. Okay, and then we can just say x is equal to random dot rand int 1000 and print x. Okay, that's going to run, and every time we run it, it's going to give us some different number between 1 and 1000. Okay, I can also, if I import math, x and the square root of x. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so I think that's most of what we've covered up until now. So as you go through this, if you have questions on any of this, then it's important that you let me know. Okay, I think that some of you are getting your spacing mixed up, or it seems like functions have broken some of you. So make sure you're asking questions so you don't get caught not knowing that moving forward functions are really important. Okay, and if I need to explain it again to you, I'll explain it again. Not a problem at all. Okay, so no new material for today. We're just going to, in class, go over some more of the same kinds of things.